Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? I'm so glad to be back. Draft is over. I got the OTA slash minicamp slash rookie minicamp slash all that good goobly-gook. I got that schedule right in front of me. And you know what else we have? The NFL schedule was released today. Sort of, kind of. It's not, for us, we recorded on May 11th. So that's the release of the schedule, right? May 11th? I can't hear you, Rick. You have yourself on mute.
Oh,
there we
sorry.
go. There we go. Hey,
I was eating Chipotle.
we're zooming, baby.
I was saying.
I was like, you're
Yeah.
really quiet.
Sorry, that Chipotle, man. I had to finish it.
Oh, man.
We're recording this on Thursday. The schedule releases tonight, but it's at 8:00. We're recording this at 6.
Yeah.
So we don't really.
We don't.
Even
know
though half the schedule is already leaked.
Yeah. So we know the Patriots are playing the Eagles week 1 and the Dolphins week 2, and one of those weeks Tom Brady will be.
They're playing the Jets week 3 as well.
What
So
the frig?
They got
You
Jets,
know what?
Dolphins, Eagles.
I'd almost
Thursday.
rather have it be front loaded.
Week 6, they're against the Raiders in Vegas.
Week 13
Week
against
7.
the Colts in Germany.
Week 7, they're against the Bills. Week 17, they're against the Bills.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I know.
Anyway, Patriot stuff's for a different show. Schedule releases soon, so we will have some strength of schedule stuff for you at some point, and we can start factoring that into our. Obviously, you could do that anyway because the schedule is already out.
Yeah.
But just knowing week to week what guys are going to do, what their schedule looks like, and how difficult it's going to be as the season goes along, you'll be able to see that. But anyway, we're jumping full into redraft content. We're going to have all things redraft for the next 5 months,
Yeah.
as we go into, the summer months and go into August, which I would consider draft month. We draft most of our drafts in September, so our draft.
I know.
month
We
is
wait
September.
literally the last possible second.
I love it. I love drafting like literally the weekend before Thursday Night Football because that means the games start that week and I can start stressing about my lineup.
Yeah. Our league is the last league that I do. I'm literally done with everything until we get to our league.
Yes. But anyway, so with that, we're going to be doing a lot of redraft content coming up. We're going to talk about some rookies this week and how they relate to redraft and how you can what guys you should be targeting, because I think that's important to talk about this time of year. But anyway, today we're going to talk about must-draft wide receivers. We did must-draft running backs before. Today we're going to break down those must-draft wide receivers. Before we do that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Just type us in, find us, Fantasy Champions, FF Champs, whatever. You'll find us. If you're listening on a podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review, share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and like, and comment down below. All right, without further ado, let's jump in. We got 5 guys to talk about on this show, so we're going to try to, 25 minutes. I want to get this done before my freaking camera dies. And for whatever reason, I don't know if somebody can help me out with this, but the stupid Sony cameras die after 30 minutes of recording, so that's why I disappear regularly.
Right. Right.
You might not see my face in the second half of the podcast because my camera just is like, you know what? I don't feel like recording past 30 minutes.
Yeah, we got to get that working so everyone can see your beautiful face.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I need a real camera at this point. But anyway, so it's also good. I was talking to somebody the other day who listened to podcasts. They like to sit at their desk or whatever, or driving to work. If they listen to their podcast, they say they like shorter form podcasts. If they see 3 hours, they get stressed out.
Right. I'm the same way.
Yeah. I don't care. I sit there all day. I listen to 2 radio shows over the course of 8 hours. And then watch nightly sports. It's an addiction, I think.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
It's a problem. But anyway, So we're going to talk about must-draft wide receivers. To kind of preface this, we're talking about dudes like obviously Jamar Chase and Cooper Kupp and some of those
they're
guys.
must draft.
They're must
Justin
drafts.
Jefferson.
Definitely. Like you want those guys on your team. You know what I mean? If there's a way you can get them without, destroying your draft strategy or whatever, that's great. They're obvious must drafts. They're guys that are going to help your fantasy team significantly going into the year. And, this past year, I think having a top end wide receiver is actually slightly more helpful than having a top end running back. Because they at this point in PPR, obviously they score a lot more points. So having one of those guys is really important, but we're going to take a look at somewhere in the second round all the way back and give you 5 guys that we think you should definitely have on your team going into 2022. We'll give you the underdog / FPC, whatever the frig it's called. ADP. I don't know if Sleeper's updated yet. I don't know if they joined the club.
It'll probably be soon.
It's freaking June. I mean, it's May, guys. Get on it. But anyway, all right, let's get chatting. You have any thoughts on must draft wide receivers before we jump in?
No, just like you just said, the Cooper Kupps, Jamar Chases aren't on this list. So it's must draft guys from pretty much, I would say, like the second round on.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk. The first guy that we have is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, this one's going to take a little bit of money.
Yeah, you do have to spend some draft capital.
Yes. So Amon-Ra St. Brown right now, he is ranked as the wide receiver 9. I'm actually going to pull up his player profiler.
I think he is wide receiver 8 on Fantasy Pros in PPR.
Yes. Wide receiver 7 on FFPC. The ADP on Player Profiler has him at 15.7. So was that second round pick?
Yeah, I think that might be underdog around there too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean you've been doing some underdog drafts, so you would know.
Too many actually.
Too many. It's easy.
The last $4 or 5 days, dude. I've just been doing underdog drafts just for the fun of it because I had money in my account from the last year, so I've just been doing a bunch of drafts.
Just going. I haven't even looked to see if I won last year, so there's that. That's how much I forget about it. But anyway, Amon-Ra St. Brown last year, he finished as the wide receiver 7 on the season, I believe, 6 or 7, with 267 total PPR fantasy points. He started off the season on a tirade.
Yeah.
He in the first 2 weeks of the season, he just friggin' gas bombed all fantasy lineups and anyone that was playing him. He missed week 4, but in the first 3 weeks of the season, I believe he was the wide receiver, a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy football, and we were proclaiming
next Cooper Kupp
league winner, next Cooper Kupp. Missed week 4, had 5 points in week 5, had a bye week in week 6, and then week 7 he had 1 point, so that brought him back down to earth. The rest of the season, he was still really good, put up some really good numbers. The big thing about Amon-Ra is that he's your prototypical slot receiver. And last year we were a little bit concerned about Amon-Ra going into the season because Jameson Williams was on the football team along with Chark. They brought in Chark, correct? That was the receiver that they signed, G.J. Chark. So they brought in Chark. They drafted Jameson Williams. They still had T.J. Hawkinson.
Yeah.
And the path was not there in my eyes for him to have the season that he did because there were so many people around. Chark blows. Jameson Williams was in and out of the lineup with injuries.
He missed the first 12 games of the year.
He missed a lot of the season, and he's going to miss a lot of the season coming up. And then, Hawk was traded halfway through as well. So now that Hawk is gone, Chark is gone, and Jameson Williams is going to miss a good chunk of the first half of the season, this opens up the schedule for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And even when Jameson Williams gets back, yes, I think target share is going to be pulled, but there's so much available target share for Amon-Ra to take that I don't think it's going to matter when Jameson Williams gets back. So for me, I think he's a top 10 wide receiver this year. I think he's a target horde in PPR leagues. It's too much to overcome, too much to pass on for me.
Yeah. And the thing is, and you mentioned Jameson Williams, he's going to be out the first 6 weeks. So those first 6 weeks, Amon-Ra is going to tear it up. But I think even when Jameson Williams comes back, he plays a completely different role than Amon-Ra, and they actually complement each other pretty well. He's probably going to be he's probably going to be the X. He's going to be a deep threat, big play guy, while Amon-Ra is still the slot guy, short yardage, and just target hog. So Amon-Ra, no matter what, I think will have a great season. He's going to have a lot of opportunity because even, again, when Jameson Williams comes back, it's not like going into last year when you could look at Chark, you could look at Jameson Williams, you could look at TJ Hawkinson, you could look at Swift. This year, it's going to be Amon-Ra. He's by far away the guy. Jameson Williams will be the deep ball threat. Mm-hmm. And then who else is on that team? Marvin Jones, they re-signed, or they brought back, who's been in Jacksonville the last couple of years, but he's an old man. He's just going to be a depth guy. Josh Reynolds is still on that team. He, again, just a depth guy. He's like a wide receiver 4-ish, 3 or 4. So the Amon-Ra is there for the opportunity. And not to mention, you also got Gibbs as well, who will take some targets, but it's not going to be like anything crazy. So Amon-Ra is in line for a monster year. And in PPR leagues, you're going to want him because I don't think he's Cooper Kupp, but he's pretty close to it, in my opinion, in terms of being a target hog in the slot machine, just PPR machine. Mm-hmm. I'll try to be drafting him a lot this year.
Yeah. Totally agree. And I think, obviously I kind of like it is disconcerting slightly that you had like weeks 4, 5, 7 that were kind of a little bit lighter. And, there could have been situations where, they were easing him back in from injury and all of that stuff. He did have a 9-point game as well. But, I mean, you look at the rest of the season, 20, 39, 13, 13, 22, 15, 27, 34, 13, 15, 14, 10, 10 in the last 2 weeks. It's like, those are like, I mean, there's some games in there that are like, the 10-point games are a little bit disappointing, but like, I mean, if you're getting what would we say, 3, 4, 30-point weeks or 27 or more point weeks, like those are winning you weeks. You know what I mean? And so that's what you want from your wide receivers. Like, if they're being consistent on a week-to-week basis, getting you 13 to 15 points and then providing you with a boom game every once in a while, I think that's super, super helpful.
Right.
Any more thoughts on Amon-Ra?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. Let's move on to the next guy. And this is
you put him on the list.
This is Rick's guy. I mean, you can't not. I hate that. I hate this football team. I hate that they got Rodgers. I hate it all. But you can't doubt the talent. Is Garrett Wilson. So Rick, why don't you take the mic and talk about Garrett?
Yeah, I mean, I drafted him a lot last year in Dynasty, and it definitely feels good to have him on a lot of my teams this year. And look, I'm not going to say he's a guaranteed superstar because with Rodgers is kind of a wild card. The Jets as a team, to me, Nathaniel Hackett, like you could see that blowing up. But if things go well, and even not, it doesn't even have to be perfect, but just like reasonably well, Garrett Wilson is in line for monster year. Aaron Rodgers has already, after just throwing with him a couple times, said that he reminds me of Davante Adams. Randall Cobb said he's a mix of Davante Adams and some other like legendary receiver. He was like, he's blown away by how good Garrett Wilson is. And to me, I think he's going to throw him the ball a lot. And not only is he having a year 2 jump, right? He was wide receiver 20 as a rookie, which is a good rookie year. Very solid rookie year. He only had 4 touchdowns. Now you're getting Aaron Rodgers. The Jets, as a passing team last year, they did have 4,000 yards, thanks to some trash time from Joe Flacco and Mike White. But they only had 15 passing touchdowns as a team the entire season, which I believe was dead last, or at least in the bottom 3 in the league. Mm-hmm. So now with Aaron Rodgers, even if Rodgers sucks, like he has a Russell Wilson type year, I think Russell Wilson still had more than 15 touchdowns, and even that I really don't see that happening. Even if Rodgers sucks, he's probably still going to get like 20 touchdowns, which means it's an automatic upgrade for Garrett Wilson.
Yeah,
which is the worst case scenario. And if Rodgers is just somewhat decent, let's say Rodgers throws for over 4,000 yards and like 28 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. Garrett Wilson should be a wide receiver 1, an easy lock for that. And he's got his upside is through the roof too, because if Rodgers has a really good year, like Brady did with the Bucks when he went from the past the Bucks, or Stafford from when he went to the Lions and the Rams, if it's more of that kind of example, Garrett Wilson can be a top 3 wide receiver this year in fantasy. And he could just put up a monster year. He's got the talent for it. Now he's got the quarterback for it. The sky's the limit for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing there that I disagree with. I think the biggest change, obviously, I think if they just rolled, like, if what happened to them is what I was hoping that happened to them, and they didn't get Rodgers, that would have been glorious. That would have been like Jets, 1,000% all Jets. But
they still would have got somebody like a veteran.
Well, I mean, they waited too long. If they never got, like, it's good.
Well, there was a rumor that
Jimmy left, Derek Carr left, and
right.
like so it's like,
but
if they didn't get Rodgers, it was Rodgers or bust.
Rodgers I think there was a rumor that no, they wouldn't go back to Zach. They would rather, I think, go with Flacco. But there was a rumor that said if they weren't going to get Rodgers, they were going to do everything to get Matt Stafford from the Rams. Like, they were going to call in. So, like, they would have called, like, all 31 NFL teams. And
I'm
been
glad
like,
they
hey.
got Rodgers. To be honest,
who's your quarterback?
Matt Stafford will last a few more years. The Rams,
I don't know, bro. Stafford's elbow is kind of washed.
Yeah, that's true. But if they had, say the scenario happened where they weren't able to get a quarterback and you had to start the season with Joe Flacco or Zach Wilson.
Okay.
I would have been significantly less excited about Garrett Wilson. He probably would be in the same ballpark as how I feel about Drake London, where it's like,
right,
your quarterback's Desmond Ridder, or your quarterback is Zach Wilson, or Joe Flacco, or whoever, Mike White, or whatever. I think Mike White signed with the Dolphins. That's a good signing, by the way.
It is,
considering the amount of concussions that what's his name goes through. But yeah, so it's like, I would have felt a little bit less. I think Rodgers takes him to that next level, but there is a big concern for me with Garrett. So I'm gonna play. I agree with Rick that Garrett Wilson should be on this list. He's gonna be in a lot of teams that I draft this year. I'm gonna try to trade for him in Dynasty. All kinds of stuff, if that's even possible.
I was gonna say,
but like, the one massive concern that I do have, and caveat that I do have with Garrett Wilson, and maybe Rick can argue me down on this, is that we've seen Rodgers with new receivers. And Rodgers went to the Jets and basically created Packers AFCs. And he got his guy, Randall Cobb, who basically is going to be worthless to the Jets, and he's probably not even going to throw it to him. He'll throw it to him like 10 times. And then you also bring in Allen Lazard. And I know, like, Garrett Wilson's got talent, and he's the dude, and he's a really great player. But with Rodgers, like, having a repertoire with him matters. And I think I'm not in on Allen Lazard at all. Like, I don't think he's going to... Like, last year was the year that you needed to prove to me that you could be the guy with Rodgers, and you weren't. So, like, I don't like Allen Lazard in any way, shape, or form. Like... Maybe in deeper wide receiver leagues, stick him on your bench. Like, he wasn't that bad, but like, I just don't like him for fantasy football. Whereas Garrett Wilson should be that guy. The question is he, or does, Rodgers get there, look at these, receivers that they currently have, and then say, I don't like Garrett Wilson's attitude. I don't like this. He kind of smells when we hang out together.
Yep.
Can you believe this idiot? He didn't pay for my waffle at breakfast. 10 targets deducted.
Wait, you don't believe in all these theories that I have? Yeah, I'm not throwing you ever again.
Would you like to join me in my dark room? Nah, I'm not good with that. I'm never throwing you the ball again.
Yep.
Rodgers is a weird cat, and so I'm going to believe the talent is going to when you have a receiver that's just that good, like, Rodgers is going to have to throw him the ball at some point. So it's not going to be like, like last year, Christian Watson was that dude, right?
Yep.
And he got
it took him half the season, though.
Took him half the season. So, like, you could come out early in the season and, I mean, maybe it's a Jets thing. Maybe the Jets are like, we need to get this guy the ball. And Rodgers is like, I agree. And they just go with it. But the sign of him saying, like, oh, I want Lazard. I want you to bring back Randall Cobb. I want you to go get OBJ. When they already had a receiver on the football team. Like I like that is sketchy to me. So I don't know why that happened. I'm not saying anything's there. I believe in Garrett Wilson, but I wanted to throw that out there as a counter argument to Garrett Wilson.
No, I mean that's fair. It's Rodgers is such a wild card, which is why it's
He
like
could just completely suck.
Yeah, I would. The only thing I would say against that is, like I said, in the very early portions of the offseason, in the very few times that they've thrown together, the way Aaron Rodgers talks about Garrett Wilson is like he's a superstar already.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if he feels that way, then he's going to give him the ball like he did with Adams, and he's going to play that Devontae Adams role.
Yeah.
But I mean, we'll see how it plays out. The Jets are definitely. I think the Broncos last year is definitely making, or else I would have been all in. But the Broncos last year has made me very nervous about the Jets for fantasy purposes. But Garrett Wilson is still my guy, so I'd be taking him no matter what. Even if they didn't, like if they went back with the example that you said, he would definitely be a lot lower in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But like I think I would still take him without Rodgers over like Drake London. I mean, it'd be in the same tier, but I just personally like the player a lot, so I would draft him no matter what.
Now, Garrett Wilson is going to be expensive. He's going to be 16, according to Player Profiler.
He's right after Amon-Ra.
He's right after Amon-Ra, or this says he's right before Amon-Ra. But he's gonna cost a lot. So like we're not talking about a wide receiver that you can snag in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round that's gonna be a steal.
No.
You're gonna have to pay up for Garrett Wilson and and I've also explained in the past with we got to move on, but I've also explained in the past with some of these with the Jets situation where it's like this reminds me very much of what happened with the Denver Broncos last year. You had a very good defense, a team that won 6, 7, 8 games that could, everyone's looking at like, oh, they're a quarterback away. They go out and they get Russell Wilson, they get Nathaniel Hackett, they add those 2 guys to the squad, and they end up being absolute garbage all season long. And it just doesn't work. And like Jets, good defense this year. Offense isn't quite there. Quarterback is the difference, a lot of people believe. You go get Rodgers in a trade. You bring in Nathaniel Hackett. Like, it's so mirror image to that situation that it kind of scares me a little bit for the Jets.
Yeah.
So I think Garrett will be fine. I think you'll be fine drafting him, but I do like to throw the caveats out there. Very similar receiver to that. Chris Olave is number 3. I actually wasn't going to put him on the list because I forgot who the Saints got at quarterback. I don't like Derek Carr that much, but like Chris Olave last year was a wide receiver 25 in PPR leagues. So he was just on that edge, just on that precipice of wide receiver 24. Did he miss time?
I feel like he did.
I can't remember.
He had a concussion, didn't he? He missed 2 games.
He missed 2 games. All right, so he's the wide receiver 25.
That's pretty good.
2 games. He's around 13 points a game, which matches like Metcalf, Brandon Ayuk, Terry McLaurin.
I think he had higher points per game than Garrett Wilson. Not by much, but it was like by 0.2.
So he had a really good rookie season. My main concern was that if they don't have a quarterback, then I like him and Drake London kind of fell in the same conversation for me. If they didn't have a quarterback, Garrett Wilson was in the same boat where it's like you got these really good wide receivers that don't have an offense really to stand on. And so the Saints go out and they get Derek Carr, and I think that regardless of what your feelings are on Derek Carr, last year he made Devontae Adams a really good wide receiver in fantasy football, really, really good wide receiver. Hunter Renfrow in the years past. In 2021, I believe he was a top 10 wide receiver. He's made Darren Waller a top end tight end that could be like in the top 15 at the wide receiver position. So he has put fantasy assets out there and had some success with them. And I think if you're looking at a dude like Chris Olave, to me, I think he's a cheaper version of Amon-Ra and Garrett Wilson, and you can get him in the 3rd, 4th rounds and get him at a significantly cheaper price, but also have one of those dudes that could ascend into a top 10 wide receiver next year. This is actually probably one of my breakout picks if I had to take one. I do think he's going to be really good. The Saints always have at least somewhat decent of an offense, so I think things will be okay for Chris Olave, but like I don't think Derek Carr is going to be like he's the best quarterback they've had since Drew Brees at this point. So, like, I'll take it.
Yeah, and now since you played devil's advocate with Garrett Wilson, I'll play devil's advocate with Chris Olave.
Fair enough.
And I love Olave. I'll preference that to start. I'll probably be drafting him a lot if he's there. I think looking at their team totals, it's different than the Jets than last year. Like they had an okay passing offense overall, not great, but it was 4,000 yards, 24 touchdowns. Does Derek Carr have more than 4,000 yards and 24 touchdowns?
No.
I think he might, but it probably won't be that different than that. So I don't feel like the quarterback upgrade is really
if you took his best years with the Raiders and
if you take his best years with the Raiders, then yeah, that's possible. I think his career high is 32 touchdowns, and his career high in yards is 48,000, which is really good. But before that, his other career high, his second best season in yards is only 41,000. And the last 2 years, since his third year in the league, his total touchdowns on the season is 22, 19, 21, 27, 23, 24.
Yeah.
So those aren't groundbreaking stats. It's kind of similar to what the Saints had last year. But at the same time, I do think he'll probably, with the Saints, play pretty well. I think Chris Olave is the best receiver he's had outside Devontae Adams. And Devontae Adams finished as wide receiver 6 last year?
Yeah.
So I think Olave has that potential to be that. I am and I'm not scared of Michael Thomas because he's probably going to get hurt again. It's been hurt for 3 straight years. But if he stays healthy, then you have to add that into the equation as well. But either way, the talent is there. And I think Olave, his floor, is still really high. If you draft Olave and he doesn't end up being what you kind of expected, you're at worst case scenario still getting a really good wide receiver too. I think he's just a really solid player. So I do agree that he is still a must draft. I just have my concerns.
Yeah, definitely. Rick and I also have equal concerns, but also equal excitement for this next guy, Kadarius Toney. This is the riskiest must draft that I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, you probably didn't even turn off the video because you heard Kadarius Toney.
It is harder for me to put him on the list because last year I was hot and bothered when I saw him get traded to Kansas City. I was like, oh my God. And I just traded for him too.
Yep.
I was all excited. He did not produce. Last year he was the wide receiver 109, so he wasn't great. There were good games, but he also missed time. He has a problem with staying healthy, but I also think he's on a football team that wins. He's not, in the billows of hell in New York, even though they made the playoffs. So right now his ADP is 81, but I think what the Chiefs did is enough evidence that this dude could be the guy. Oh, they either really like Sky Moore or they really like Kadarius Toney.
Well, did you hear the comment from the GM?
Go ahead.
They asked him, why didn't you address the wide receiver room this offseason to get a guy from Mahomes? And the GM says, we already have a wide receiver one. It's Kadarius Toney. So, I mean, the hype was there. The hype is there. The thing with Toney is we know the concerns. It's injury. And he probably will still get hurt at some point in the year. I'm honestly betting on him missing some games. The thing is, he's never played more than 10 games in his career in a season, which is just really, really bad. But if he stays healthy, he can finish as a wide receiver one. He can finish as a top 10 receiver. He's got that kind of ability. Yeah. He's going to be in an offense that is obviously electric. Mm-hmm. It's arguably the best offense in the league. He's got the best quarterback in the league. He showed flashes last year on the Chiefs. He just didn't have a lot of snaps. He got injured a lot. But when he was out there on the field, he was still really, really good. Mm-hmm. He got a lot of touchdowns in a very limited amount of time. I believe he had one rushing and then he had 2 receiving in just 3 games that he started with the Chiefs. So he had 3 touchdowns in 3 games. I think he's a guy that, especially if he's the wide receiver, because when he's out there, he's got to be a wide receiver 1, right?
Yeah.
And in that offense, with his ability, we're not talking about Juju from last year. Kadarius Toney is electric. I think he has, like, the ceiling isn't the limit for him. His sky, or his ceiling is the sky. Like, he's got all the talent in the world. It's just going to be about staying on the field.
Yeah. I think what you're trying to say is sky's the limit.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, I mean, there's 2 outcomes for Kadarius Toney: explosion or death.
Yeah, which, by the way, he's probably going to get drafted in like the 8th or 9th round. I'm willing to take that risk.
Right now, his ADP is 81, which is around round 7. So I'm in. Like, I'll do that in round 7. I'd even do him round 6 if you. That's what she said.
In a 10 person, that's round 8 though, right? And then 12 person, that's round 7. Yeah, I think. But like Fantasy Pros has him lower than that. So.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see once real drafts start floating around. Obviously, I think when the Chiefs traded for this guy, it was like it wasn't an immediate, like.
Yeah, I agree.
Like
he was going to help us in the playoffs.
Their goal was not for him to have success this year. I think their goal was for them to, specifically with him, their goal was to get him and then let guys like Hardman go, and let some of the receivers walk, clear some space, and then get Toney the ball. This is the guy they want to give the ball, and if it doesn't work for him, then it doesn't work, and I think this is it for Kadarius Toney. But this is the closest, like, he's not as fast as Tyreek Hill, but this is the closest thing that you're going to get to it. In terms of like the glitchy change of direction kind of stuff that he can pull off. So, he's a very tricky wide receiver to get down. And, when you watch Tyreek Hill's game, outside of the blazing speed to pop the top off the defense, if you take that aspect away, these 2 players are very similar. So I think, Toney's obviously got to take that next step. He's got to not completely blow. And he's got to not get hurt. So those main things, like, he doesn't suck route running or anything like that. It just seems like he never got involved. So, and like Sky Moore was underwhelming last year. They got Rashee Rice. So it's like a younger receiver core coming in. This guy is the best thing that they have, and they're going to have to get him the ball. Now, they still got Travis Kelce, so he's going to sucker away 300 targets.
The GM, he went on a rant too about Toney. He said, I don't know if there's a limit on his game. He said, has he ever played with a quarterback that likes to push the ball down the field? We have a lot of high hopes. He was a first-round pick for a reason. There's a reason why we traded for him, and we felt like he was a first-round talent. He went on to say, we got him in the middle of the season, so there's only so much you can do with him. But he's extremely smart, so it's not going to be anything with grasping ideas or concept. But we were surprised how quickly he picked it up.
Let me jump into my OnlyFans for a second and just take my pants off.
Yeah. He even alluded to him playing the Tyreek Hill role. So
yeah, that's okay. So, like, it doesn't cost much. It's a really great draft selection, and he's a must draft, like, in my mind.
You just got to know that, like there's a real shot he misses.
Like you could waste a 7th round pick, like, and that, like, when we're talking, like, what is your 2nd round pick gonna be? 7th round pick gonna be? For years it was Tyler Boyd for me, so, like, I'll take a risk on Kadarius.
Right.
All right, next guy we got is C. Rids, and the last guy we're going to talk about, we'll try to make this fast. Calvin Ridley has not played football in 2 years. He was like, you know what? I'm sick of this team. I'm sick of this organization. I don't want to play for you guys. I'm going to take a sabbatical, take a little break from the game. Mm. You know what? Freak you. I'm betting against you. That's against the rules. Can't do that.
He betted for them.
A player in the NFL could literally take, like, meth and get suspended 4 games.
Yep.
And, like, you could gamble. You spend $5 on a bet, and you get suspended for a whole season.
Dude, Jameson Williams didn't even gamble on the NFL.
He gambled in the facility.
He gambled. I think it was on UFC in the facility, and he's suspended 6 games, which is more than like.
That's the most absurd. I don't know why people are more like. There's not more outcry. Like I understand the cheating aspect of it. Like, you bet on yourself to catch, or a bet against yourself to catch 5 passes, and then
if you don't bet on the NFL, I don't think he should be suspended at all.
Yeah, not at all.
Maybe even a fine. If you want to give him a fine for it, like, hey, you're not supposed to do that. Fine, whatever. A 6-game suspension.
Yeah.
Unreal.
But anyway, Calvin Ridley suspended for an entire season. I thought maybe they would let him back in, to play in the playoffs because he serves 17 games, So I was like, maybe they'll let him back in, but they said no. So, Ridley comes in this season. He obviously was traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's going to play with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has never had a receiver like Calvin Ridley. And, Rick and I, there are certain players that we like. Like I like Devonta Smith, but he's not on this list because he has a quarterback that likes to run around in circles and can't throw over 3,700 yards. I hope he didn't. Did he throw over 3,700 yards this year?
It was something like that.
Freaking A. But anyway, they're not a pass first team. They're not a team that's going to look to pass the ball 600 times. So you want that in PPR. And Trevor Lawrence's game is going to be passing 575 to 600 times. So, like, putting him on that football team with Trevor Lawrence is a very good sign for Calvin Ridley, and I think he's going to be significantly under-drafted. My guess would be he's, like, somewhere in the 5th round. I'm pulling it up now. His ADP currently is loading.
On Underdog, he's not...
Yeah, he's around 4th or 5th round.
But on... I forget what it is. I don't even think it's Sleeper. There's a platform that I saw, somebody tweeted it. He was going 9th round.
9th? Mm-hmm. What the hell?
Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But yeah, I mean, he's, as you said, I think he's the most talented player Trevor Lawrence has played with in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
The concerns with him is that he's just been away from the game for so long.
Yeah. And
it might take him some time to get back to the player that he was.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's able to, in 2020, I believe that the COVID year, he was the wide receiver 4 in points per game.
Yep.
So, like, we're talking about a top 5 potential wide receiver here.
Held the Patriots
playing with Trevor Lawrence in a top, would you say top 5 passing offense, maybe top 10 passing offense?
Probably top 12.
Top 12, okay.
Yeah.
I'll say top 10. Maybe I'm a little hot, but in that range, right? It's at least a very good passing offense.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have Christian Kirk ranked higher, and I understand that based on the success he had last year, as well as the connection he has with Lawrence. But to me, I think Calvin Ridley, when he's healthy and ready to play, is a better player than Christian Kirk. So I think you can get Calvin Ridley at a relatively decent price for somebody who could have a monster year.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, the stats spoke for themselves when Calvin Ridley was playing for Atlanta. And having Trevor Lawrence, one of the, great young quarterbacks in the NFL, ascending into that top 10 conversation at some point in his career. Maybe it's next year, but Calvin Ridley goes into that situation and he's going to get a lot of targets, who's the second best receiver on that football team?
It's Christian Kirk, right? It's going to be those two.
Yeah. So, Calvin Ridley will definitely walk in there and take 1 million targets. And I think they're going to try to get him the ball as much as possible, which is why he should be drafted. He is costly, though, for a player that has not played in 2 years. He's ADP of 46 here. A little bit concerning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that's Underdog as well, because I think the other ADPs that you had were pretty much the Underdog ones.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it depends on the platform, because we'll see if he ends up being that.
Yeah,
I would still draft him, but it's less appealing.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's a later round pick, like where Fantasy Pros, I think, has him ranked as like the wide receiver 37. If he's getting drafted as a wide receiver 37, I'm all in.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all in too. It's not even a question. So there you go. All the dudes that we're gonna be drafting out the wazoo this year. Hopefully, nothing happens to them. You know how that works. The summer is an evil time. Anyway,
Yep.
we got top 5 rookies for redraft on Thursday. Be sure to check it out. See you later, guys.
See you.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.